Thank you, guys. God be with you. My name is Nick. I am one of the ministers here. It's good to be with you this morning, as always. I hope you're good too. I hope you are happy to be here. Can we try something? And hopefully this works, because a sermon kind of hinges on this working. I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. Because here's what I want to do with you. I want to see if we can dig up some cultural wisdom. I want to see if we can play a game that is meant for us to kind of like unearth and name some ideas and bits of wisdom that are in our culture that our dominant world would say are true. And they would say, if we do these things, if we think these things, if we play by these rules and live by these ideals, we'll be good to go and we'll have the thing that we all want and are chasing after. And now whether or not we believe in these things, besides the point. Because I'm gonna bet that these things are baked into us, especially if we are of a certain age. The younger ones, you guys are gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's actually a really good thing. You don't want these things baked into you. This will actually show how we're evolving and growing, but that's another sermon. And so what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna say the beginning of these proverbial bits of cultural wisdom, and you are gonna finish it for me. You with me? Okay, we'll start off easy. Pull yourself up by your. If you want something done right, you gotta. Yeah. No one's ever gonna hand you. Try it. Free lunch. Yeah. Social play, anything. No one's gonna give you anything. Yeah, all those work. Winners never. Quit. You can be anything you want if you just. What doesn't kill you? Yeah, Kelly Clarkson, yes. Who grew up with those sayings in their lives? Yeah, we all did. We all did. This is the stuff that if you are, again, of a certain era, of a certain age, it was in the air that we breathe. These were just the things that existed that were in us. And I wanted to start off with naming them because the important thing is, the meaning behind the silly game is that these aren't just sayings. These are values. They show us what is important to our world. And in all of these things and all the other ones that we could name, it shows that in our culture, in our world, we value strength, we value self-sufficiency, and we value independence. If you need less, depend less, do more, handle your own problems, carry your own weight, and make your own way, you are good to go. You with me? Yeah, that was kind of in the air. We know this. And maybe even more so, we feel this. Because whether or not you agree with these things, whether or not you say, that's not how I was raised, cool, it doesn't matter. They're in you, they're baked in you, and these are the things that shape our world. I mean, just think of the compliments that we throw out there. Oh, she is so independent. Oh, he's a self-made man. She's got it all together. Oh, they never ask anyone for help. Right? We hear those, and again, it's reinforced, and we think, oh, that's the goal. That's who I should become. I gotta be the hero. I gotta have a self-made success story. I'm gonna overcome everything. I gotta figure out all on my own. If I don't need anyone, then I am good to go. I haven't made right. Right? I mean, when has, oh, you're dependent ever been a compliment? It's not. That's actually a diss. It's throwing shade at people. Because that's not what we value as a world. And it's so pervasive, it is so everywhere. It's also shaped how we understand and hold our faith, and it's also shaped and changed how we read the Bible. And there is a story in the Bible. You can find it in the Gospel according to Mark, and it goes like this. We'll put that up there, please. As Jesus taught, he said, "Beware of the scribes, like all who walk around in long robes, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and to have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses, and for the sake of appearance, they say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation." And Jesus sat down opposite the treasury in the temple, and he watched the crowd putting money into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth a penny. Then he called his disciples and he said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on." And if you've been going to church long enough in your life, or even if that's your first time reading it, it's a very easy conclusion to get to that in this story, Jesus here is praising the widow. The whole story is about him pointing out how amazing she is for giving everything, for lifting herself up by her bootstraps, for doing it all, for the sacrifice she is making, for going, wow, how great is she for stepping up. She's giving everything, even when she has nothing. Wow. Look at her, how incredible that is. And if you go to a church that preaches that, the takeaway is going to be, oh, you should be like her. We should all go and give and sacrifice just like that. She is the example for us. We should all go and do likewise. Anyone ever hear that sermon? Yeah, me too. I've probably given it. It's a really easy conclusion to make. Given the culture we're in, given the things that we just collectively value and say are important, it's the really only logical reading that we can have of that story. But we have to name that, because here's what happens when we do. Here's what happens when we read that story that way. Suddenly, these things that we value in our world, individualism, self-sufficiency, sacrifice, suddenly they stop being important, and suddenly they become holy. Suddenly these things become sacred. Suddenly God comes down and says, yes, this is the way you're supposed to be. Be like this. Then you will be holy. Then you will be good Christians. Then you'll be complete and whole humans when you are like this widow. When you do it all on your own, then you are more holy than anyone else. But here's the thing. If you take away that filter, if you take away the lens that we get from our culture, if you look at what is actually taking place in this story, no, because the thing is, this story is not about her. This is not a story about the widow. This is not a story of Jesus lifting someone up. This, rather, is a story of Jesus calling something out. This is a story of Jesus calling out the very system and culture that made her think like she had to give everything in the first place. That's what this story is about. And like a lot of stories we find here in the scriptures, if you just kind of look around it, you'll find all the hints you need to kind of get to this conclusion. And we can see that right at the very beginning where Jesus kind of calls the scribes out. And the scribes are just the religious leaders. They are the teachers. They are the people responsible for saying, this right here, these values, these practices, these things are holy. This is what it means to be human. This is what God wants. They're the people who kind of provide the ethic and shape to the religion and norms of the culture. And he calls them out and says they are devouring the homes of the widow. He was so badass, I love it. And now, people have taken this literally, or they have taken it symbolically. But I think the best way is actually to do both. Because Jesus means it literally in the sense that they are the ones who are taking away all the external security for these women. They are the ones who are taking away their homes and their status and their sense of belonging. And they are the ones who have made widows the most vulnerable people in that whole society. They're the ones who are making the rules that say, oh, no, you can't work. No, you can't get a new home. No, you can't be dependent on someone else. You're just cut out. And they are the ones who are doing that spiritually by saying that, oh, you're actually worthless too. You actually have no role. You have no purpose outside of a man and outside of kids. If you don't have those things, I'm sorry, but you are out of luck. You don't belong here anymore. So that they are devouring not only their worth, but also their belonging. The homes in which they get their ground and their security from. They're taking away all of those things. So of course, when we understand that, what the widow is doing is even more obvious because she is hustling for those things. She is there thinking, oh, if I can just give everything, if I can just do this, then I will earn my place, then I will earn my worth. I can gain back everything that's been taken away from me. And so Jesus sees her walking up, giving all that she has, giving more than she can afford, sees her sacrificing everything, and his heart is not full of pride. His heart's broken. He's not admiring her, he's grieving her. He's looking at this woman and calling his disciples and saying, look at what the system has done. Look at what we've come to accept. Look at what has become normal. Because the tragedy here that he's pointing out isn't just that she feels pressure to give what she can't afford. And it's not just that she's looking to earn back these things that she never actually lost. The tragedy is way bigger than that. The tragedy that Jesus is pointing out is that she's standing there alone. It's that she is the person with the least who is somehow carrying the most. The tragedy is that nobody stopped her along the way to the temple and said, no, what are you doing? You don't have to do that. You don't have to live like this. That isn't your role. Keep the coins, keep your money. You don't need to do that. We've got you. We will carry this for you. We can do this together. The tragedy that Jesus is pointing out is that the widow goes, gives everything, gets celebrated, and the whole thing keeps on moving without anyone pointing out how broken the thing is from the beginning. That's what he's pointing out. And we need to see that because this story is also our story. Like we said, our world is no different from Jesus's. We still live in a world where we think if we hustle, if we do the best, if we give everything, if I volunteer for this and this and this and this and this, and bake a casserole, and take my kids to school, and do my job, and keep a clean home, and go to the gym, and be financially successful, then I'm gonna have it all. And will be praised, and people will say, oh, she's just so independent. And people will say, oh, he's a self-made man. And we get bigger and bigger, and we think that's how the world works. But underneath it all, if we really look in the mirror and we really want to get honest about it, we're all just hustling for our worth, and we're all just hustling for our belonging. And here is Jesus saying, and this is what we have to hear, is no. No, 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 no. You don't need to live like that. It should never, ever have been like this. That whole culture, that whole earn your place and worth, this whole dog-eat-dog world, this whole notion of the individual making it happen, this whole pressure to sacrifice everything, it's not something we should celebrate. It's something that we should be grieving. It is not something we should lift up. It's something that we should tear down because it should break our hearts. Because that's not how it was ever meant to be. The question that should come out of this story isn't, how can you be more like that widow? The question should be, what kind of world do you want to build? Do you want to build a world where that widow comes and gives everything? Or do you want to do something else? Do you want to build a different kind of world? And whenever we ask that question, definitely in here, but also out there. So whenever we have political conversations, whenever we have questions about policy, whenever we're structuring our neighborhoods and talking about access to essential services, the thing we should always think about as people of faith and spirituality is the very first two stories in the Bible, the creation stories. And yes, we're using plural because there are two of them. But both say is something really, really huge and profoundly basic. But these two things that we have to hear whenever we think about or talk about or plan about how the world is supposed to look and the kind of world that we're trying to build together as human beings. Because what these stories tell us is, first, is that God created a world where everyone could have enough and everyone could have a place. And they tell us that God created a world where that gets done through us. That the very point of humans existing, the very MO that we are created with, was to be co-creators and help God build that world. That's why we exist, is to help that kind of world where everyone has enough and everyone has a place happen. And again and again and again, we see Jesus pointing back to this, saying that to be human and alive in the world, to be a person of faith, to be spiritually whole, is to be someone who helps God create that kind of world and helps transform this world bit by bit by bit back to a world where everyone has enough and everyone has a place. That's what it all boils down to. That's the whole problem, the whole faith and spirituality is trying to solve. Is how do we do that together? What do we got to do in here? And what do we got to do out there in order to make that world that Jesus called the kingdom happen? And our tradition gives us two easy answers. And by easy, we mean straightforward, but insanely complicated. But it gives us two ways. And we see Jesus pointing this out again and again and again. And what he says, and the wisdom of our tradition says, that the way to do that is not through individual efforts. It's not by one person being the hero and doing everything. It's not by sacrificing everything you have. But instead, the way we get there, the way we do that, is through generosity and collaboration. The only way the world gets built is by generosity and by collaboration. It's when we get generous, when we give out of the sense of joy and gratitude and belief in what is possible, and when we get collaborative, when we work together and trust that each of us will play a role in making that happen, then, Jesus teaches, and only then will that world begin to happen. We do it through generosity, and we do it through collaboration. That is how the world gets built. That's how anything good gets built. when you give out of generosity, out of joy and gratitude, and you do it with others. It gets done by each of us asking a really, again, basic but huge question. What can I bring? What could I do? And we ask it knowing that you'll bring what you can, that I'll bring what I can, that we'll all bring what we can, and then we Voltron it all together, and we move a little bit closer, and no one person is having to do it all. We honor our seasons, we honor where we're at, but we each bring something and say, here, I want to give this. And you give that, and you give that, and you give that. And then somehow, in the most beautiful way, it all comes together. And we're in this world where not everything is perfect, where not everything is full. There's still lack. But we're moving towards that place where everyone has enough and everyone can exist. That's the goal here. Generosity, collaboration. That's how we get to this world transformed. And so maybe the question that we should have always asked with this story isn't, can you be as sacrificial as this widow? No. Maybe the question needs to be, what kind of world do you want to build? What kind of place do we want to have? Do we want to build a world where everyone is left to carry their own burdens, where your worth is measured by how much you can endure and do and give, where belonging is earned? Or do you want to build a world where we can look at each other, see all that they are, and say, I got you. You don't need to give all that. You don't need to live that way. That was never supposed to be this way. Show up, do you, I got this. And trust that in some way, that is how it's meant to work. And because that is how it's meant to work, it will take us to the world we're meant to have. Simple, profoundly basic. But it only works when we take off all the lenses and filters we've been given, and we trust in generosity, and we trust in collaboration. In any situation, wherever we are, that's where it stops, because that's where it begins. And so as we go into this next song, and for the rest of the service, and the rest of your lives, one question: what can you bring? What can you bring? And each day the answer might be different. Each situation, the answer might be different. But the question is always the same. What can I bring? What can I offer? What can I do? And it's never gonna be at the expense of yourself. It's never gonna be at the expense of your worth or your belonging. It's always gonna be from your heart. What can I give? And everyone else is going to ask the same question. And suddenly we are living out of abundance. Suddenly we are living out of diversity, and everything begins to be transformed. So what can you bring? What can you bring? And to that we all say, Amen.